All right, good afternoon, all in attendance. We are here for a Taos Municipal Schools Finance Committee meeting. It is September 25th, 2024. It is approximately 5:08 p.m. I would like to call this meeting to order. Can we please get a roll call?
President Flores,
Here.
Vice President Sprague,
Here.
Secretary Trujillo. Here. Board Member King,
Here.
Board Member Concha.
Here.
Superintendent Lane, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Public for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item B is our land acknowledgement statement. Secretary Trujillo, would you please read the land acknowledgement?
It is respectful to recognize the unique and enduring relationship that exists between indigenous people and their traditional territories. We acknowledge that we are on the historic homeland of the Red Willow people within the original territory of Taos Pueblo. This acknowledgement will oblige as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to respectfully recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Red Willow people whose land and water we benefit from in this great valley today.
Thank you, Secretary Trujillo. Item E is approval of the meeting agenda. Are there any proposed amendments to the agenda? Superintendent Ford? Hearing none. I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the meeting agenda as presented.
A second?
A second from Secretary Trujillo. Please call the roll.
Board Member Concha,
Yes.
Board Member King,
Yes.
Secretary Trujillo,
Here.
Vice President Sprague.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, item F is public comment. Anybody wishing to speak during public comment? I don't believe so, so we will move on from public comment. Item G is presentation. We have GA Stifel Bond Advisor presentation to cover funding resources options and capital outlay projects.
President Flores, members of the board, Dr. Williams. We have today Nicholas came from Steeple to give us a little overview of how things kind of work. You guys had a question the last board meeting about like the teachers option funding and stuff like that. He's going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to turn it over to him.
All right, Mr. King, thank you for joining us. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thank you, President Flores and the board and superintendent for having me here tonight. I apologize for not sending a copy of the presentation around earlier. So Vice President Spray, I'll have to email you a copy so you have it to look at afterwards.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Some of this is review from what you might have seen from us in the past, and then I did include some updated information. We have preliminary 2024 assessed valuations. So that does update the district's bonding capacity. And then I also included a couple slides talking about capital funding, maybe why now and what those different programs are that are available for the school district. So on page 3, that's where you'll see the updated bonding capacity for the school district. That takes a look at all of the homes and property here in Taos. We take a look at the assessed valuation, and then the district is allowed to bond 6% of that total value. That amount has gone up over the years and did go up another 3%, or is estimated to go up another 3% for 2024. That increases your bonding capacity and how much money you're able to issue, but it also increases maybe your share of a project when we're talking about asking for state matching dollars. So right now, 6% of the district bonding capacity is about $87.5 million. And then the district has $15.5 million outstanding after the most recent bond payments that were made at the beginning of September. That puts your current or actual bonding capacity just under $72 million at $71,900,000. that is theoretically the most that you could go out and ask voters to bond for. That money doesn't come free though. There is going to be some tax consequence to the residents if you wanted to issue that full amount. And then just like a car payment, if you were to pay it back over 2 years or 20 years, that just does change what your payment amount and what the tax impact is to residents. So there are some ways that we're able to help the district issue larger amounts and still keep that tax impact relatively small. I'll get to some of those scenarios towards the end, so you have for residents and what that might mean for them on a monthly or annual basis. And then the bottom corner just talks about the future bonding capacity. If you weren't to do anything today and waited another year, you'll have paid back some of the existing bonds that are outstanding that will increase your capacity. And then we also anticipate some further growth here in Taos that factors into those numbers going from 71 all the way up to 87 million through 2030. The next slide just takes a look at the historical tax rates that are here in Taos for the residents and for non-residents, broken up by the operational dollars that the district collects, and then the SB9 and existing bond and ed tech levies that are out there. The ed tech notes, when the district does want to issue those, do not require voter approval, but the SB9s and GEO bonds do require voter approval. The next time that you'll have to go out to voters for SB9 money is in 2029. So if you were not to do, a GEO bond or issue any debt over the next couple of years, you will still most likely want to go back to voters in 2029, so you can continue that SB9 collection. It's been consistent right around that $2 mark, and then does change a little bit if collections and cash and balances are good for the school district.
Quick question for you, Mr. Kaney. When you see that $2 amount, is that would be the increase to the tax?
Excuse me, one more time with the last part of it.
That $2 amount that you stated, would that be the increase to the taxes for the?
No, that's no increase. That's the amount that is currently being collected. And so in 2029, the district would most likely want to ask voters to renew it. $2 is a standard amount that school districts collect across New Mexico. And then that gets factored into the total tax rate of 5.4 mils that are showing on the far right-hand side. It is not dollar for dollar. The district, we can skip ahead to it, but you end up paying based off of 1/3 of your property value. So if you had $100,000 property here, you would end up paying taxes on 1/3 of that, so a little over $33,000. And then it's $100 for every $1,000 in assessed valuation. That ends up being on a $100,000 property, a $33 increase on an annual basis. And then most of us make our mortgage payments on a monthly basis. Your escrow account funds in, so residents don't necessarily see that $30 number. For them, it could end up being as small as $2 or $3 on a monthly basis. And then for some of the bigger, more expensive homes in town, if they were over $500,000, those residents do see a pretty noticeable increase. It could have the numbers close back. I think it's somewhere between $50 and $60 on the high end that someone might end up seeing, and that's if you were to push the district's bonding capacity towards that max of that $70 million.
And that would be monthly or annually? Monthly.
$60 or $70 monthly, yes, sir. And again, that's on the very large homes in town, not the average resident. I have a chart towards the back that shows starting at kind of the average prices and then does go up in value for some of those more expensive homes here.
Christopher, is this then countywide? Would this election be countywide?
It would most likely be countywide for everybody in Taos who is enrolled, has some students that are eligible to enroll in the school district. So depending on, I don't remember the school district lines off the top of my head. I think it's just within Taos County for your district, and so it would apply to everybody, yes. The question would.
Oh, gee, so that goes all the way to Penasco, all the homes all the way to Penasco, all the way to Talquesta.
It would not include Penasco. If those students are eligible to enroll there or have to enroll in those districts, they would not be.
If there is a district school, they're not, it doesn't apply.
Correct, yeah. So they might be in Taos County, but if they have a different school district within the county, they're not eligible to vote.
Okay.
Only students who have the ability to benefit from the question or the bond would be the parents who could vote. So if there's, out of towners who have a second home, older retirees who don't have a student that's enrolled in the district, the question is still gonna be asked to them, and hopefully it's, they gave something, they went to the schools when they were younger, they benefited from the public education department and want to give back in that regard. So there's some conversations that would, want to be had ahead of time, not just surprising everybody with an election, making sure they know that you're pairing it with the state dollars, or that you were doing as much as you can to leverage it and not just trying to raise taxes because you can. And sorry,
Another
that's wrong.
question.
You wouldn't be the ones raising taxes either. The residents ultimately would be the ones who decide on that question. You would just be the ones asking them to vote on it. And then depending on the scenario, I have one that I think it's 21 million or $22 million now that the value's gone up, where the district could issue that much in debt and it would have no tax impact to residents. And then because the current mill levy is at 5.5 right now, you don't technically qualify for any waivers through the state. Your amount that you would pay is just a reduced local match. So right now through fiscal year 2026, the match has been reduced. You used to be responsible for 94% of any project. You're currently responsible for 63% of the project.
Where does that 63 come from?
That's the hard part. It wouldn't come from your operating budgets. It would come most likely from the general obligation bond. Unless it was, one teacher housing unit, they have a max cost of $500,000 and the state would cover the other 37%. So you would have, $300,000 maybe at most that you would be responsible for on a single teacher housing unit. That could be taken from SB9 or extra operating cash money, so it didn't get swept by the state. But any larger projects most likely have to be raised through bond money. That's what all states do. If we want to, the next couple slides are just showing the district's existing debt. We've shown you that before, but that just shows how a little bit is paid off every year. That's more for Tanya and I to remember when payments are due and how much. And then if we keep moving a little bit forward, you can see the capital funding slide. That shows the reduced local match and how that is put in place through 2026. And then the main options for any school district, the state is going to give you your per pupil dollars. That really just covers faculty costs and keeping the lights on for the building. It doesn't cover ongoing maintenance and repair. That is up to the district and local residents to find a way to source. Some school districts have wind farms and they're able to collect extra cash from that. Some have oil underground and they're able to collect extra from that. And then majority of the districts in New Mexico have to end up asking voters to help fund, anything beyond general operations, including maintenance, and that's the SB9s and bonds. If anyone wants to look at the existing debt, I'm happy to discuss that, but part of why earlier I mentioned there was the ability to issue about 21 or $22 million of debt without an impact to residents on the taxes is because of this chart right here. As the district pays back debt over time, you would go to voters in 2025 for an election. Bonds would be sold in 2026 and your first payment would be in 2027, right when you start to see that drop off in the outstanding debt. So if you were to issue debt or go to voters for a bond next year, you can kind of continue that and keep it as a steady mill levy. If you were to let the debt go down over time, it would have a lower tax impact for residents. But the next time you go to ask them to issue bonds, it would look like a tax increase to them. So you might not be increasing taxes, you might just be going back to where it is today. But because the district has paid off debt over time and say you ask them in 2029 when the SB9 question comes up again, you would end up seeing the mill levy increase from 1.75 back up to that 5.5 range. So it ends up looking like a pretty scary or large increase to some residents, even though it's right in line with the historical average. So that's part of why we like to have this conversation early, to just start thinking about projects, even if it's something you're not going to do today. The district wouldn't have bond money, for a year and a half, 2 years.
You know what comes, President, you know what comes to mind is that, if you look at what's occurring in Taos County, let's just look at Taos County, is we have a lot of new properties being sold. And so you have this tax lightning that is occurring and has occurred for some time. It just, all of a sudden, it just hit people not realizing that when they buy a house, that maybe we're paying $1,000 in taxes. All of a sudden, they're paying $1,500 a year in taxes. And that's low. I mean, in here in New Mexico, it's low in comparison to any other place in the United States, I'm thinking. But, and I say that only because, I saw that in a property that I bought. And I saw the taxable value, and then I saw what they were paying, and then all of a sudden, when my tax bill came, it was like $500 more. And so then you have, for those people that are buying homes, and you can allude to that. Keith, I don't know if that affects you at that point, or you go on with the person that's buying the property after they buy the property, because it's something that they really have to think about. You know, when people are buying homes, it isn't just the fact that it's being, all of a sudden, you look at the tax bill and you see that it has the market value of what they paid for the property. So everything changes. So then this levy is going to be assessed to that level of taxes, right?
Yes, it would.
The current level of taxes. So you have this dilemma of people not being able to buy homes here in Taos. I just talked to somebody yesterday, and she's a nurse, and she said they're looking for property. She said a fixer upper is like $200,000, a fixer upper. And she says, and that's way out there, not even in the Taos area. She says, and we can't find anything. So it's, you know, when you look at the people that are paying the taxes, right now we have a list of delinquent taxes that are going to be on the tax roll. You know, and can these people pay that amount of that increase? That's going to fall on us if we're wanting to do anything, which we'd love to be able to do this. But my concern always is because I saw the taxpayers in a one-to-one right across my desk and their struggles. And so it's something there to really, really ponder.
Yeah, I understand that, and it would, go ahead, sir.
Oh, go ahead and finish.
No, I'm there.
No, but what's your response?
Go ahead.
Oh, of course, yes, please.
I was gonna say, if we want to skip ahead to page 15, I want to just point our eyes over to the table on the right. So like you were saying, if someone bought $150,000 home, or it previously was assessed at $150,000, and they're buying it today and the new market value is $200,000, that ends up increasing what the assessment would be from $100 to $133 for that particular resident, where they only did see a $50 increase or $50,000 increase in the property value. That's $133 over 12 months. And so it ends up being, you know, $11 instead of maybe $9 for the resident. So we're talking $2 or $3 a month. It does certainly add up, especially when the school district is not the only ones taxing residents. They still pay the majority to the county and other folks out there. So that does quickly add up. You know, we're showing right here what the total general obligation mill levy would be. That's not what the total tax rate is for the residents. It's probably closer to 20 or 21. So it does add up pretty quickly. And then as homes go from 200 to 300 to 400, you can see those numbers almost double pretty quickly as well. So that's why we wanted to include a couple options. There is no tax increase to residents. The last one does end up having the largest increase to tax residents. That would bring the school district's mill levy from 5.5 all the way up to $10. Once you get to that $10 mark, the state considers you maxed out and doing everything in your bonding capacity to go ahead and fund projects. And then from there, they cover 100% of anything that you can't afford. So for Taos, your, max bonding capacity is relatively large. It ends up being, I think, 65, you have to bond 90% of your maximum amount. I think in the proposal, we did $65 million. There are other school districts where the most they can afford is $1 million. And if their building is bad enough, they can go apply to the state right now, ask for a new building, and they'll contribute their max bonding capacity. For them, that's $1 million, and the state covers the other 99%. So Taos is in a different scenario just because you have a bigger bonding capacity than a lot of residents. But a new school today can cost $40 to $100 million. And so you're not going to be responsible for just your 63% necessarily. And that, I think, is something when talking to voters early and often before an election, we can let them know that, hey, we're leveraging, the $50 million that we're asking you on this election, and the state is going to contribute. If we had, blueprints and knew the design was $100 million, we can give them the exact amounts, and starts to help people know that they're not putting the entire bill. So this is still early in the conversation, a lot to figure out if, just teacher housing was the focus, if you did want to look at bigger options. The main reason I included a couple of the bigger funding options is just because of the rank that the middle school has at the state. You can qualify for a decent amount of funding and waivers because you're in the top 100 there. So it might be advantageous if you can't necessarily afford teacher housing with current cash. You have to go to voters, and if you're going to ask them for some money for teacher housing, I wanted to at least present the option of asking them for housing and school money.
President Lewis, if I may, just in the middle school, the way the ranking is right now, I believe because it's ranked number 5, it qualifies for 100% match, if I'm not mistaken. The middle school.
Right. Well, thanks, Mr. Kane. Sorry, I call you Nick. We know each other. So hypothetical, you live in Santa Fe. And I'm just thinking out loud here. Could we, because we have such a prolific real estate market, could we ask for funds at closing for the public schools? Is that a way to? I'm just thinking out of the box, just thinking out loud. Follow me there, because people are coming here, they're buying. I mean, we're not seen as, I just ran into a realtor at the title company, and he says, keep cash offer 1.2 million. So, just give me your expertise there.
I haven't seen it done before. We couldn't probably make it like an official rule that they have to contribute $5,000 at closing to the school.
Yeah, Santa Fe was doing something, I think you heard about that, but I'm just curious, is there a way that we, any sales, could we set it at a price point and say this goes to the school district?
No, I think the main thing would be what Mr. Trujillo hinted at, is that when you buy the house, the assessed valuation jumps up pretty quickly that following year. And that's when you see the largest increase in benefit to the school district, is knowing that someone's lived in the house for 20 or 30 years and they're paying, $20,000 assessed value, is not having to go up to the fair market. Even just having that natural turnover helps the school district. And then if we do continue to see more homes, the value go up. Some of these numbers aren't necessarily true. We assume a 2% growth rate through 2028, and then no growth there on out. I think Taos will probably see, different growth, especially if there are added homes in the area. That will lower these tax numbers as well and bring down what the residents are responsible for.
I have another thought, another question. And that, let's say on 200,000, $133. But that's only the GO1, because we're looking at the taxable value, but there's also a hospital levy that is in place. So when you look at the tax bill, you're gonna be looking at the 133. And you're gonna be looking at at what the hospital is, what's gonna go to the hospital for their. And so it's compounded, this is just this part. But when you look at the whole tax bill, and I think that, at one point, could you give us an example of a tax bill here in Taos? Of what it really looks like, and so people, so we all can see what the breakdown is. And what goes to would go to the school, what goes to the hospital, what goes to, like I said, all the different breakdowns. And see, we have El Prado and we have the Ranchos area. They're in an entirely different, they pay this for this sewer system, and they pay an awful lot of money. If you look at their bill compared to what anybody here in town, I'm glad I don't live in Ranchos in that area, because they're being taxed. And probably, Mark, you can allude to that in your area, but it's really we're gonna have to look at that scenario. And one in the, like the Ranchos, one in El Prado, one here in Taos, and what the impact is gonna be for them. Because that is, like I said, that's very concerning. That's very concerning to me.
Yeah, that's definitely something I can follow up on, and if anyone does come to you, the main thing to remind them is that you don't benefit from any of those hospital collections, you don't benefit from just the general property collections that the county and the town are collecting.
Exactly.
That's the hardest part, that goes back to, my original point of anything beyond the per pupil dollars is up to you all to figure out how to fund, and that's where resident support is needed. Otherwise, there would be no public schools, and that dramatically changes the dynamic here in town to where maybe you don't have as many professional families that want to live here. That hurts the economy, where you lose a big chunk of your working class in town as well. We don't want to get in that back and forth game with residents, but having a well thought out plan ahead of time about why you're asking for money and how you are responsible for making sure that it doesn't fall in on the students, and having that school give, 100 people in town jobs. Things like that are why you have to issue the bonds, or why you want to issue the bonds. And then, if raising taxes on residents is the biggest concern and there's not a lot that needs to be done around campus, there's several scenarios, underneath that $22 million amount that the district could issue, and would have no tax impact to residents. They might even see taxes go down over time.
I have another thought, and only, see, because you're also presenting this other very important factor, and that is, you're absolutely right. We don't benefit anything from the taxing that is going to the landholder at this particular time. And all we get is the money that we get from the state, the SCG monies, and that system is broken. And so it's a loss to them. But if we do our homework and we because that's what we did when we even did the mill levy for the hospital. We broke it out exactly what it was going to look like. So what is it going to look like for us, and say, well, we're going to need, we need this money. How in the world are we going to maintain the capital structure of our, to house the school? That's our dilemma. And it takes money. So.
And there's some examples we can follow up with that show, what the complete tax picture looks like. If you all have, 2 or 3 minutes when you get home tonight. We work with Raton Public Schools as well. I encourage you to go look at their school website. They still have their bonding information page that we helped them put together, and that lays out the picture of why they needed to do construction, how they're leveraging state dollars, what the tax impact is to residents and broken out into a lot of pretty pictures and charts that the everyday person can understand. And in their example, they bonded for $8 million and they're building a school that started at $80 million. It's now, I think, up to closer to $100 million. But because they issued their full bonding capacity of $8 million, the state is footing the bill for the other $90 million that's out there. And that's something that we very clearly laid out on the website and on that FAQ that voters had, I think, 6 months to look through before the election. And that would be a big part if you were to go ahead and ask voters for an election. It's not just surprising them, it's making sure we do detail it out that even though you do pay a lot of taxes in town, not all of those dollars go to the school district. I don't know what the hospital is off the top of my head, but I know what most of the operating mill levies are for the hospitals in the state, and they're around 4.5. If the school district is at 5.5, you're right in line, you know, with the hospital arguably, and you have more buildings going into your maintenance budget and things like that. So we can have that conversation and get creative later on if it is necessary.
And again, just for the sake of just really, this is kind of like a refresher, even to just really help us understand and just put it in a very simple form so that we can be able to explain. And you said it's Raton, that in their website.
Yeah, Raton Public Schools website. If you just Google Raton Public Schools 2023 bond, it'll probably show up, but even from their main page, they have it up on the top right-hand corner, relatively quick to find. And like you said, this is just an informational meeting meant to present some options. PSFA is the group that helps the school district go ahead and ask for state funding or matching dollars from the Capital Outlay Committee. PSFA has 2 application windows. The first one closes on Monday, September 30th. I think that's too soon to rush into anything. They are supposed to have another one that'll be between January 1st and March 31st, which gives us time to have multiple conversations, figure it out, and then whenever, if you do go to PSFA to ask for matching dollars, it's still early in the process. Most likely going to voters, if you were going to consider a big project, would be the main thing you wanted to do. And you have the option to do a special election, but November 2025 is the next general election for school districts. That gives us, 6 months or 3 months to figure out projects, 6 months to get in front of voters, have a monthly town hall. So I think November of 2025 for an election would probably be the earliest. That gives us plenty of time without having to rush. And then from there, we'd have the ability to kind of work through everything.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Mr. Kane, it looks like we, should be, and looking at requesting funds. It may not be a direct cost to our community, the homeowners, property owners. And we're here as board members is to advocate for the community. We, what hospital, Rancho Del Valle is, they were taxing my community and we weren't even on their sewer.
I know.
So we're here for the kids, we're here for the future. So, $500, I find is a drop in the bucket. We have very, very low tax, bill property tax in the state, for a resort community, we pay nothing. I mean, I do see other states, we do have a personal income tax, so we do pay New Mexicans do pay a state tax. There's nothing for free. Texas doesn't have personal income tax. And Superintendent Layton can tell you, everything's $1 more. Yep, $1 or $2 more when you go and visit. So I just think this is great, Nick. Mr. Kane, I think it's great to see it again. We do have glaring issues with staff, and I believe we can help ourselves with that because we do have property. So I think it's a great opportunity to actually get in front of the curve. This is good. I appreciate you coming up here and showing us our opportunities of in regards to generating revenue. Like, we're here to raise the test scores, to lower the absentee rate,
And whatever that is, you know, it's not always gonna be sweet music. Then we gotta do the hard work. And this is what it's about. Appreciate it.
And I would say to your comment of, you know, being maybe a destination town as well, where there could be some more second homeowners in other parts of New Mexico. If they have, you know, another property and they're a resident of Texas or Colorado or somewhere else, they don't necessarily have the same voting rights as well too, and so they might be the ones in those more expensive homes, and the question is gonna be asked of them, are you willing to fund education? And they might not have the right to vote on it. So there are some of those things to consider as well, to where you can figure it out that the majority, we can break it out, you know, if the majority of homes are $200,000, but there's 20% of them that are over $500,000, that group is gonna be responsible for the majority of the tax increase, and we could put some dollars behind it to help residents know that, you know, my $10 a month that I'm paying is a drop in the bucket because we got $50 million for the school district. So we'll help educate you so you have some talking points and feel more prepared and comfortable answering them.
Mr. Can I have a couple questions? So, just to clarify, so we currently have an outstanding debt of $15,535,000?
Yes, that number is after the September payment a couple weeks ago. So that's the current amount between general obligation bonds and that tech note that is out there.
And what is the date that we would eventually pay this off at?
So the final payment would be 2030. That was on the bulk, that's what I'm gonna pay it off. You'll have one drop off on this page right here, you'll start to see the maturities. The one is 2026, the last one is 2030. And that corresponds with the outstanding debt capacity chart. So as we have the different kind of bonds that the district has issued, as those are paid off, your tax rate goes down, or you have the ability to keep the tax rate consistent and issue, again, it could be 20 million, it could be 30 million, the number doesn't necessarily matter, it's how we structure it, and if taxes are the biggest concern, we would add in a couple more years. You all usually pay your debt back relatively quick, but there are some other districts that pay it back over 20+ years. And that would make this chart a lot longer, but also keep the tax rate more consistent for residents.
Okay, so, yes, with that, my next question, or just kind of clarifying what you've stated, so we would start to see a tax rate decrease for the citizens within our district. It looks like in 2027,
If you did nothing, yes.
if we did nothing.
Yes, if you did nothing, but you could also, if teacher housing is the main focus of today, and you needed $2 million for teacher housing, you could issue $2 million in bonds, and it would still see a tax decrease in 2027.
So in order to keep the existing tax rate that we're currently, that is currently being assessed to all of the residents within our district, you said the capacity is about 21 million, roughly?
Yes, so to keep the tax rate consistent for all residents, that's the scenario on page 13. That amount is $21 million by the time we went through an election, and just factoring in a little more growth than, you know, add on here through 2028. It would probably be 21.5 or $22 million that we would be asking voters for. Just knowing that we're not actually going to have the first payment until 2027, and that's when my growth starts to stop. So about $22 million would be the amount to keep the tax rate consistent.
Okay,
And then anything less you could issue, and we could pay it back really quick to keep the tax rate consistent, or pay it back over a longer period of time so residents see that decrease.
and then just to clarify, so the tax rates would only affect those residents that are within the Taos Municipal Schools district or boundary lines?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And that would affect all residents, not just individuals that have students that attend school.
That would affect all residents. I have to double check. I believe the Pueblo would not be impacted by this mill levy, but I need to double check on how the reservation land is treated within Taos County. I believe even if they have the option to send students to Taos Municipal Schools, but they live on the reservation, I don't believe this question gets asked of them.
Okay, and then following up, so the bonding availability that we have in that $22 million range, can that be, does that have to be utilized for primarily construction? Or can it be utilized for like maintenance and necessary issues? Currently, we have elevators within our district that we've been going out and requesting capital outlay funding from the state from our legislators that is in the amount of like $1 million, or I'm getting that confused. So we have some fire panels also, and we need to upgrade our fire panels like at Taos High School, Arroyo del Norte. That is like right in the range of $1 million to put in a new fire panel at those schools. Would we be able to utilize this money for maintenance projects?
Yes, so there's a little information on the election overviews on slides 11 and 12. I can provide kind of a detailed bullet point list that's easier to read. The main thing that the bond election can't be used for is faculty dollars to pay for salaries. Anything that includes maintenance, operations, building, tearing down, improvements, all of that is fair game and can be used for bond money. Bond money can also be used for some of the, we'll call more fun extracurricular activities that improve the student education experience, whether it's a floorboard or a new bus. Some of those come at different taxing terms and interest rates, but you can use bond money for a lot of things as long as it's not salaries.
I have another.
Hold on, give me a second,
Go ahead.
Secretary. So if we were to go out and bond that $21 million and keep the tax rate at their current state and utilize that funding to pretty much bring all of our school sites up to date, because we have a lot of various issues at the various sites. And when you start adding them up, you know, you're at probably $10-15 million, 20 million quickly. And we have a lot of deficiencies within our school district, or needs that need to be met, that we need funding for. Obviously, there's been talk of, and you probably haven't been privy to this, or maybe you have heard, but we've talked about possibility of building a new high school, building a new middle school, teacher housing. Those are higher dollar projects that our facilities are still functioning and still providing what is necessary. Let's say we bonded for $21 million to bring the various school sites up to date and correct all deficiencies that we can identify. When would be the next availability to go out and bond at full capacity to maybe at some point build a new high school or a new middle school?
That question gets hard just because the reductions that the state has. So first, if you did bond in that scenario to keep taxes consistent for $21 million, your project fund or money for use is going to be a lot more than $21 million because of the state match that's in place. They're going to fund 37% of any projects you do. So that puts your money, you know, closer to $30 million of actual proceeds, which means you can do a lot more of the checklist. That only uses half of the district bonding capacity, and then if all the other stuff is being paid off in 2028, you could theoretically have the question go to voters in 2025, and then most likely again in 2029 when that SB 9 question comes up again, and we could issue probably 20 or 30 million. I don't know off the top of my head. I think closer to 30 at that point. $1 million that would keep the tax rate consistent for residents again, but the local match is going to go back up to 94%. So you're going to end up putting the bill for a new school.
Okay. Secretary Tejada.
I'm looking at page 8 and for that 15 million and I'm seeing that it's the education technology notes. That goes away, but what would we be able to renew that?
You would, so there's a little over $3 million in education technology notes. Those are the ones in green. Those will be paid off in 2026 and 27. Those are usually issued over a 3-year period
Yeah,
because
3 years, right.
computers and technology is outdated the day you buy
So
it.
that would just kind of be not very separate from this other, correct? Or not?
Yes and no. It still factors into your total bonding
I
capacity.
see.
And so if you issue $1 million for an education technology note, your capacity is going to come down.
Okay,
But you don't have to go to voters and ask it at the same time. And there's ways that It's generally done to keep tax rates consistent. If, you know, if there's a delay in an election or an immediate need that you can't wait until the election for.
And the other, only because I heard, you know, there's some of the uses, the program monies uses. But we have to remember that the amount of time that you're going to pay for a bond is, you have to determine the useful life of what it is that you're going to purchase or use the money for. So that there is that useful life and not just, let's say, a bus.
$20 million on computers would be a very bad idea.
Yeah,
Because you're gonna pay it back over 10 years and they're
that's,
not gonna be around by then. So that's why it's meant for the bigger projects.
it's meant for the
Water
bigger
heaters,
projects.
fixing windows, keeping the students warm in the winter, whatever it might be, to keep it at standard. Fire panels, you guys are not alone, that's a very common one that a lot of people have to do. My one comment would be, if you're gonna put money into the school like fire panels, that dramatically started to change your ranking with the state. So if you're number 5 for the middle school and 103 for the high school, and you make those dramatic safety improvements, your $400,000, you know, per school is gonna bump you significantly higher up the list, and the state's most likely not gonna cover as much of the match anymore. So if there are a lot of big needs, you know, fire panels, safety, that comes first. Obviously, you need to do what you need to for the students. But if it's something that, you know, there's a crack in the wall and that can wait 2 years, then we want to start thinking longer term.
Board Member King, and then just real quick, if I could, state for this sake of time, I think we need to cut the conversation short. I would like to request, that we revisit this, superintendent. I would actually think we need a special meeting for this, because I think it needs to be a healthy conversation where we could really deep dive into it. I have some more questions for you. We have a school board meeting to start at 6, and I would like to allow our finance director to kind of cover some stuff. So, Board Member King, if you want to ask.
That's just what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
We appreciate it, Mr. Kane. This is a huge need, for our community. Just look at this room. This room is dated, okay? And as our president said, so we, you know, let's look at our role as school board members is facilitating the metrics for the students and the school, housing, teachers is what we're here for. Every one of us in our district. So that's what we need to keep front and center. Thank you, Mr. Kane, and I totally second your comments, President.
And any closing comments?
I apologize, I lost track of time.
No, no.
Happy to come back whenever.
No,
Maybe
You don't need to apologize. You know what, this conversation warrants
Yeah.
a lot of questions to you, a lot of understanding from us. In fact, I wish we had more time with you. I appreciate you bringing this information forward. I really think it's important that we study this for various reasons, and maybe, you know, keeping tax rates kind of steady right now and possibly bringing in funding to address needs, or even going out for bonding is something we need to address. So I would like to see if we could schedule you for a special meeting where we can spend a good 2 hours with you, bring some coffee and some energy.
Bring it with me.
Yeah, and we will, so I appreciate you opening up the conversation. We're gonna review the information you provided, and we'll probably have some more healthy questions for you. We'll probably go over a lot of the same information. You'll reiterate a lot of it to us. But if we're gonna present this to the public, we need them to know that we thoroughly discussed it, asked every question, crossed every T and dotted every I. And I really appreciate you coming tonight. Sorry we didn't have more time for you, but we'll make time.
No worries. I'll follow up with the digital copy of this consensus, and then I'll coordinate the next meeting.
Yeah, and I would like to ask that it be rather sooner than later, so we'll check our schedules, and maybe in the month of October, we'll get you back up here.
Perfect. I look forward to it.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Good to see you, Mr. Kane.
Ms. Maestas.
Yeah. Yeah, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yes. So, good afternoon, really quick. Resident Flores, member of the board. We provided like a summary of the capital project money that we have this year and a little bit of the expenses that we have in the past years. So I have, you know, the different types of funding, expiration dates, where do we have it budgeted, because it's already budgeted, and for you guys to know what is the funding available in there for any immediate needs that we have. So to start, we still have funds available on the GRT, which is the funds that the county issue for the districts. So we have around 993,000. Those can be used for anything capital outlay related, improvements, anything like that. And we have also, a special appropriation for the 505. We have around 333,000. Out of that, we already have encumbered 141,000, so we have a balance of 191,000. The encumbrance is related to fencing. There has been some fencing going on in some of the schools. The big fund is the special capital outlay where, we have the 3.5 million initially allocated. And then we have the new amount, the 1.5 million. And then we do have other small amounts, that we need to spend between, this year and the year 2028. For the different purpose, either, maintenance, the gym, of course, the auxiliary gym, or systems. And out of that, we don't have anything encumbered or expended at this point in time. The SB9 local and the SB9 state is usually, how we pay for regular maintenance. We get that every month from the county and the state. And we have around 3.5 million in SB9 local and 245,000 on the state match. Those funds are available. And as you can see, on the SB9 local, we already have 1,275,000 on encumbrances because, like I said, that pays for a lot of the regular maintenance, landscape, all the items for the regular maintenance. But still, if you see, usually, the expenses for SB9 run every year between 1 million and 1.5 million. So there is some funding in there for some of the immediate, necessities or projects that the district has. Do you have any questions on this funding, on the funding available?
Any questions on the board? Member two?
So what's the total unrestricted funds we have, Maria, that's available for us right now? Please.
Well, they are not unrestricted. They can be only used for capital projects, but the amounts that, we have for systems or, maintenance, which is excluding the gym, would be, let me do it really quick for you. Around 2 million too.
Okay. Great.
Maria, I have a question for you. So under what I'm reading here as the 311, or the 31100 under GO bonding, it says we have $993,222.97 available. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And what are the limitations of the utilization of those funds? That's pretty much just capital projects, any needs within the district that we currently have?
Yes, that's correct. Maintenance and capital projects. So if you need to buy, a new HVAC or any maintenance on, on facilities, or by, improving one of the pieces of land to put some, mobile homes or whatever you want to do, it can be used for that. Anything related to capital,
And then going to the special capital outlay, last year, we went to the legislature and requested $350,000 from the legislature for systems and HVAC boiler upgrades. I see that we haven't spent that, so that is still available.
Correct, yes,
Okay, and they also granted us $50,000 last year for security systems
Correct.
and equipment. That's still available.
yes,
We still have $200,000 available for buildings and grounds equipment.
yes,
And we have 244,000 for security systems and equipment. And then we have the multi-purpose gym, which we roughly have about $5 million. Is what I'm seeing here.
correct,
Okay, and then we have 1.9 million available from our SB9 local.
correct,
Okay, and then the SB9 state, we have $230,000.
correct. And we are expecting, the match for this year, we haven't received it, so that is gonna be another increase. It's around 100,000, more or less.
And then I guess, Ms. Meisels, I had a question that I had asked of you and the superintendent for our guess the words aren't coming to me right now, but our reserve funding, what do we have in our reserve funds? Like excess cash or that?
Do you have it pulled up on your screen?
Yes, so are we talking reserve money in operational? Is that what you refer, President Flores?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, any reserve funding, what do we have operational? Or if there's another fund that we have any kind of reserve funding or excess cash,
Excess cash would be the better term.
excess cash.
Okay, the only place where we have excess cash or reserves is in the operational. And, we do carry on the local SB9, as you can see, we usually get around $1 million every year on revenue. So we have $1 million plus in reserves. But the only other fund that has reserve is the operational. And on that one is limited. You cannot use that for capital projects.
What can we use that money for?
That can be used for, for maintenance or for improving students, outcomes. We have, if this is preliminary, we have to wait for the, fiscal year 24 audit. We have around 6.5 million the rollover from last year. You can use it for, maintenance. You can use it for improving, students' outcome, anything operational except for capital projects.
So we have 6.5 million.
Yes.
Okay.
Preliminary number, yes.
Okay.
On that note, we're talking excess cash, correct?
Yes.
And that it's gonna be confirmed after the audit,
Yes.
and that's the 24 audit.
Correct.
Correct, and then on that, you'd have to budget that money, whatever you want to use it for, or you need it for.
Yeah.
You have to budget, but is that a portion of that what are the reserve requirements? And that is separate from the reserves, correct?
That is including the reserve. The reserves, if you go back to statute, I believe the reserves is 5% what is recommended from your budget. So if you have a budget of 30 million, 5% of that is the recommendation of having, as a reserve for cash flow. So we are talking about, $1 million to $2 million, depending on the size of the budget.
Okay, so you need that from the excess cash, from the cash balance, so you know exactly how much your excess cash is that you can spend, because you should always have, we have by statute, keep that reserve without spending it,
at 5%, right? Is that what I heard?
5% of the budgeted expenditures. As budgeted, yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you, Maria. Mrs. Maestas, do you have any other thing you'd like to share with the board in regards to?
President Boyd, members of the board, and, the only other thing is that we had also presented this, it was a question that you all had asked on the capital outlay funds that we had. So this is just a brief summary, of what is out there, what has been spent, and then it shows the expiration dates. We have one for the 174,000 that needs to be spent here by, June of 2025. So we'll be speaking with Mr. Herrera and Mr. Mondragon to see where the district, has some priorities to spend some money. And then the next one would be the $200,000 ones. That will expire 6/30 of 26.
And that says, Taos, this is building and grounds and equipment.
Yes. So I believe that, some of the fencing is coming out, has come out of the 174th, the remaining ones, the 250 is remaining 174. Mr. Herrera has done some fencing, and then so we're gonna figure out what else we can spend this money on. So it'll be probably a team collaboration to determine what's the best fit for these funds.
Okay, any questions from the board?
And just as a note, those amounts are included on the summary that we provided. It's just, this information is coming directly from DFA's website where they keep all the capital outlay, instructions. And this one has the appropriation ID. That's why we are, providing that in case you need to talk to the lobbyist and he said, oh, the appropriation ID, blah, blah, blah. That information is in there, which we don't have on our Excel sheet.
Okay.
Yeah, Mrs. Bonestis, could we use that, I guess, line G 2290, is that also be for, use that for infrastructure for the teachers' housing? It's a couple 100,000 that expires June, in regards to June 30th, 2026. Yeah,
It's for building and ground equipment,
would that be applicable for grounds,
or
like
the,
road work?
Yes.
yeah.
We could do that for infrastructure,
It's all
okay.
contingent on what Superintendent Layton and Mr. Herrera. the-
Yeah, I'm just, in regards hypothetically.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Okay, so just for the record, we went into H of new business, HA review financial statement, we kind of just flow right into it. Superintendent Leon, if I could just iterate, so we go to the legislature and request capital outlay funding, and we've been doing that annually every year. In working with our lobbyist, and with our senator and representatives, whenever we request monies, a lot of times so they granted us $350,000 last year. It's been shared that if we go to the legislature again, this next year, they would like to see that we're spending this money and identifying, so we identify needs. And it looks like, we haven't spent some of this money, so I would request that we can identify needs where we can get this money spent down. For example, we have fire panel needs at a couple of our school sites. Those have been estimated to cost about $1 million. If we receive money this past legislative year short of that, and we went back again and requested more money, to get to that benchmark of money that we need, that would be a sufficient reason not to spend it. But when we're asking for money, and this was, prior to you coming on board, like for the building, we just recently put some HVAC upgrades at Ranchos and Royals. I kind of have a question as to, and I don't know if you have an answer as to why that money wasn't spent out of this $350,000 capital outlay. And I would hope that it wouldn't have been spent out of our SB 9, being that we had legislative funding for it, but, it may very well possibly spent out of that SB 9 money. So just cut, make a long story short, can we work with our facilities department and our school sites to identify deficiencies? I would like, with the consensus of the board, maybe, you know, one board member not being able to fully direct, have a list compiled as to a full itemization of needs at each school site, so we can start to identify how we could draw these monies down. Because I believe it is gonna be our intentions to go to the legislature again to request money, and we need to be diligent in showing that we're, you know, looking to spend the monies that we have.
President Flores,
Yes.
those needs were identified. That's why when we asked for this money, remember there was a list, it was identified. So this money could be used for that list, wherever that list is.
Mrs. Maestas, do you know where we spent the money, or what funding source we spent for the HVAC upgrades?
Yes, that'll be extra funds. That has to be spent.
Okay,
by
good.
September 30th.
Good.
And so we have a place where we can spend this money.
Board Member King. Your question? I think moving forward with the presentation, we heard from Mr. Kane, and it seemed the money that the district does have, knowing that the district has a lot of outstanding needs, I think it's very important that we start to identify a comprehensive list of needs. Obviously, we're not gonna be able to spend and correct everything, but I think it's important that we do justice by our students and by those that work within our facilities, that we're spending money to make sure that those needs are met. I don't, you know, something I've learned in government, working at the town, you know, we are a government agency and we are to provide services and fulfill the needs of our constituents, and we're not in the business of building a bank account. We obviously want to have reserves. We want to ensure that we have operational funding. We want to ensure that we have money in the event of an emergency, which I'm glad that we have this amount of money. And I think it's important that we continue to maintain a consistent reserve funding, but I think we need to, seeing that we have this amount of money in these various line items, I think we have the ability to address a lot of deficiencies we have within our district. Anything else?
Any other questions?
I think we're good. Thank you so much for presenting this. Thank you, Mrs. Hidalgo. I appreciate your time, and Mr. Kane, thank you for your presentation. I think we're going to continue this discussion, seeing that we have funding available to and body capacity available. I think the district is in a very good state. And we have aging buildings. They might not look like we're in a good state, but we're in a good state financially to maybe start addressing some of these needs and stuff. So, okay. Appreciate you both. Thank you.
Thank you. You need to sign in.
So item I is future topics. I think we kind of just cover that. If we could just get a comprehensive list of even the smallest needs, I think it's very important. And if you could take back to the cabinet superintendent for each principal to start identifying even the smallest need. And we'll start with needs. Obviously, we have a lot of wants, but let's address the needs. And then get into the wants and the wish lists. So we can prioritize and have the board give some direction to the district as to where and how we can best utilize these funds. Any future topics for the finance committee?
Does finance have anything that we have to read? That they need?
Will relate to this. No, they gave us all the information. So item J is upcoming finance committee meeting to be determined. I think we have the superintendent look at the schedule and see if we could get Mr. Kane back up here So we can further discuss bonding availability and continue the discussion. And I think it'd be important at the next finance committee meeting to also, give the district time between now and then to compile that list of needs, so we could possibly make a determination as to, how to best spend that money. I think it's important that we do spend some of this money, we have a lot of needs throughout the district. With that, item K is adjournment of the finance committee. So move to adjourn. All in favor? Any opposed? Guess that takes us, want to take a 5-minute break real quick? Or
Let's do that.
5-minute break, and then we'll start the school board meeting. Regular schedule.